I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right, we have 4 items on the agenda tonight, 2 items of old business and 2 items of new business. The agenda looks complete unless the planner has something else to add. All right, well,
Madam Chair, you have 4 regular members of the board and 2 alternates, so you need to designate an alternate to vote.
Yeah, because we need 5.
We do. So let's have the oldest alternate, or the alternate
me.
with the most with the most tenure, I should say.
That's okay.
The longest
Whichever
tenure.
one
All right.
give
Thank
me.
you, Christine. You will be. That does not in any way mean that Mr. Gilly cannot participate as fully as he would like to. Okay, so let's introduce the board members and the staff. I do want to introduce a new person here, Matthew James, who is our new planner. Matthew, would you like to say something about yourself and let us extend our welcome to you?
Got to go to the podium.
Hi, I'm Matthew James. I'm the new planner for the town of Harpswell. I have a background in archaeology, quaternary and climate studies, and I've been working as a code enforcement officer and planner in a nearby town up until quite recently. I'm happy to be here and to be taking over for Mark as he transitions out and becomes our consultant for a few months. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we'll be scheduling a workshop soon, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you. Do you like to be called Matt or Matthew?
Matt's fine.
Matt, okay. All righty, so we have a quorum. Let's do introduction of board members and staff. Amy Heibel, the chair of the board. I live in Harpswell.
Howard Levitan, Oars Island.
Courtney Snellings, Oars Island.
Yeah, it is.
Ken Holbeck, Oars Island.
Matt Gilly, Cundy's Harbor.
Christine Donovan Hall, Oars Island.
And I'm Mark Eierman, and I was the town planner until this morning.
You still are, though.
All right, let's take up our first item of old business. What I'm going to do, just so the board knows how I'd kind of like to proceed, I want to introduce the application as the chair. Then I'm going to turn it over to the former planner to see to ask him to sum things up. Then I'm going to ask the planning board members if they have any questions of the planner or if they'd like to move directly to the applicant, either one. So that's kind of the way I'd like to handle it. So this first application on the agenda is John Libby Construction for David and Debbie Anderson. David and Debbie Anderson are seeking to remove a non-conforming home and construct a new non-conforming house in its place. The lot is located at 65 Potts Point Road. The lot is about 0.19 acres. This is definitely an old lot, about 8,821 square feet. We are once again looking at a jurisdictional issue with regard to whether or not the board wants to take this issue up and actually review the application or send the application to the codes office and have them deal with the construction. The current structure, as you might imagine, is non-conforming with respect to the 75-foot setback from the shoreline. It's only 59 feet. And the property line setback from the road and also the northerly property line setback. In this particular case, the applicant proposes to reconstruct the home in the same location with very few changes at all, which we will hear about. So as we said, the board will hear and then make a decision one way or another about how it wants to move with regard to its jurisdiction over the application. So I would ask Mark if he has any comments, any information he'd like to share?
All as I would say, Madam Chair, is you should have all received a revised survey plan. The original plan showed the setback from the edge of the road, not from the property line. Essentially, 90% or so of the existing dwelling is non-conforming with respect to the 75-foot setback, and then probably half of the portion that's more than 75 feet is in the setback of the either sideline or road, so almost 100% of the existing structure. The issue before the planning board is, do you want to take jurisdiction for considering whether the applicant meets the setbacks to the greatest practical extent? The board was out there for a site walk, and given the situation, there is not a lot of potential to do anything else. There is a small increase in the footprint in the area on the water side of the dwelling and what would be the, I guess you call it the south property line. There's indentation, and the proposal is to put a triangular deck in that area. And I guess in my notes to you, I suggested that you remand it to codes.
All right, thank you. We did go on a site walk. So does the board have any questions of the planner, or would you like to move to the applicant's representative?
Mark, could you take me through the slight change that you talked about there? Basically filling in some of the irregular shape of that side and putting in a deck, as I understand it?
Yeah, if you look at the plan that was in the original application, not the revised plan, which has the existing footprint and the proposed footprint. On the existing footprint, there is a little, I would call it notch in the building on the southeast corner, and their proposal is to essentially keep the structure of the building in the same location, but to fill in that notch with a deck.
So, just to finish up my thought, in the definitions section of the ordinances, there is some language that deals with increases in nonconformity of a structure. And it seems to say that they have allowances for certain things. And it says, included in this allowance are expansions that infill irregularly shaped structures. Is that what you're relying on to make that determination?
Yeah, and nothing is closer to either the water or the setback on the property line from that.
Okay. That's what I thought you were saying.
I have a question of you also, Mark. This is from the original plan, and I finally took my magnifying glass out so I could read it, and it appears a little notched area says grandfathered area. So I'm assuming that has already been grandfathered, correct?
Well, what they've done, if you look at it,
Yeah, I'm just reading the thing.
if you look at the existing line, they have said on the two almost parallel lines that the closest point on the building to the highest annual tide line is 58 feet 11 and half inch.
11.
And all as they've done is rotated that dimension to show where that same distance is with respect to the notch. And then, if you look at the proposed layout, you see that same pair of lines and that the area of the deck is behind the 58-foot setback that's existing.
Right.
So they're doing what Howard said, is they're filling in that little piece there with a triangular deck.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Does the applicant want to speak? Have anything to say?
Me too.
You don't have to, but you're certainly welcome to.
My name is Diane Bibber Oden. I work for John Libby Construction, so I am their representative tonight, and I'm the agent of the owner, David Anderson and Scott Anderson. I would just like to say that we have adhered to the town's set ordinances and the codes and the floodplain. So we would just ask that you remand it to codes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just have one question. This is, I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to clarify. Using the same foundation.
No,
Oh,
reconstructing the foundation.
because it's not
It's
good?
all on ledge,
Okay.
and part of the ledge is going to be dug out inside of the
I
existing
missed that.
footprint.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
that was-
Yeah, I think that we discussed that on
We
the site
discussed
walk.
that on site.
Thank you.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
somehow missed that.
That's okay.
so
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, that's becoming an increasingly relevant issue for the planning board. But thank you.
It is within the existing foundation, and it's a small amount of ledge, and we're hoping we're just going to be able to bang that out with jackhammers.
Okay, super.
you.
Thank you very much. All right, any discussion, any further questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Good. I just want to note that it's really, and it may have been alluded to earlier, but one of the things we look at in terms of non-conforming uses is whether the building can reasonably be moved to make it more conforming.
Can't.
And this is a very small lot. There isn't any real place to go in order to do that. So I think that makes our decision a little easier.
Right. And I actually think we ought to make that as a finding in every one of these non-conforming cases of structures, that the first aspect, the threshold question is whether it can be ever made to be conforming. And if we get to that, if that answer is no, then we go to the next inquiry, which is the greatest practical extent with respect to making it as non-conforming, as conforming as possible, what's practical.
That would require an ordinance change, I believe.
Well, I mean,
No, I think we can-
Madam Chair, I mean, actually, the item that's before you first is simply, do you want to take jurisdiction? And it seems to me that it's only if you take jurisdiction that making findings about what you can do or not do is appropriate. I mean, it might be part of your consideration of whether you want to take jurisdiction or not. But really, the action, the first action for the board is, do you want to take jurisdiction? And to me, I think the cleanest and correct action is simply to remand it, and unless you want to wade into the details of the application.
But he has a good
Yeah.
point for future, I think.
I don't think you can get to the
Yeah, not for this
remanding
one.
question until you answer the other questions.
Yeah. And I'm
I
suggesting
guess I
that,
disagree.
I think that's a really good point, and I think we'd have to clarify that in the ordinance. I think we would.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Please.
My name is Kai Mathis. I'm the owner of 70 Potts Point. I'm the direct neighbor of the Andersons.
Yeah.
And we were in a similar situation where we were confined by the setbacks from the water and the road and all that. and we were able to tear down and rebuild and stayed in the same spot, rotated a little bit, and I think it turned out a great house, and I appreciate that the board let me do this. For what it's worth, I'm supportive of the Andersons' application that they can tear down and rebuild there. And even if the deck, spans that corner, I think it doesn't really encroach to the water more. So as a neighbor, I'm supportive of the application. I just have one question with the ledge. When we dug into the ledge, it was brittle and came just out. If there is any blasting necessary, my question is if we would be notified and if this could cause any damage to the neighboring property. I don't have the answer to that.
Where's Margaret?
That's a good question.
We have a blasting
you.
ordinance in
Thank
town,
you.
don't we?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
We have a blasting ordinance,
Yes.
so you would get notice.
Okay.
Getting to
Madam,
speak.
Madam Chair, I mean, if you wanted to include in the motion to remand that you have, determined that there's no reasonable place to do it, and that therefore you remanded to codes. I mean, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
We have
All right,
this
we
one.
have another
Hi.
member of the public.
Right, Linda Whitehall, next door to the Andersons. We've been there since we were this big. And I want to say, just like Mr. Mathis just did, that we're fine with what is going on at the Andersons' cottage. And everything is very tight down there, as you all saw when you came to visit, so, but
Thank you, Linda. Any other comments from the public? Going once, going twice? Okay, I'm happy to entertain a motion from the board. Okay, then I will move, given that the size of the lot leaves little opportunity to revise the location of the proposed new structure that would make the replacement more conforming, it seems reasonable for the planning board to remand the application to the CEO. So I move that the planning board remands the application of David and Debbie Anderson to reconstruct a non-conforming structure on Lot 61, Map 19, that will continue to be non-conforming with respect to required shoreline setback and property line setbacks to the codes officer for processing. If the proposed reconstruction deviates substantially from this proposal, for example, if blasting is required, the town planner shall require that the revised proposal be re-reviewed by the appropriate authorities, the planning board if necessary, to determine if the board wants to take jurisdiction for the review of the application. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
enjoy. Okay. Are we ready to move on to item 2? Okay. This is a complicated application in some ways. It's Carl and Stephanie Nicholas, who own map 22, lot 36 at 84 Abner Point Road. The applicant is Blue Water Design. And again, this is a consideration of the board's exercising jurisdiction for the review of an application to reconstruct or really rebuild a non-conforming structure. So I'll just describe a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to the planner who can elaborate more. The applicant is seeking to remove a non-conforming house and attached garage and construct a new non-conforming house with an attached garage in its place. We've had 2 site visits to this property to take a look at what its limitations and opportunities are. As I said, it's 84 Abner Point Road, map 22, lot 416. The structure is non-conforming with respect to the 75-foot shoreline setback. The majority of the structure, the existing structure, does conform to the 75-foot shoreline setback, but there's a wedge of the structure that encroaches into that setback requirement. The width of the encroachment varies because the structure is built kind of on or it's not built on a diagonal, but the shoreline is diagonal. So the encroachment is from 1.4 to 14 feet. There is a pool on the property that does not conform to the shoreline setback, and there's an existing sewage disposal system, and there are 2 wells on the lot that will continue to be used. My understanding, and maybe Mark, you can elaborate on this, is that the disposal system is going to be moved, but I'm not sure the board knows exactly where. So I'll turn it over to you to summarize further.
Let me go back. In my description, the garage is not going to be removed. The roof is going to be taken off
Okay, I
and
thought that.
reconstructed. So the garage is proposed to stay where it is. I think in terms of the septic system, you're going to need to address that with the applicant. As you may remember from both the plan and the site walk, the septic tank is located between the water and the house, but the leach field is located up the hill on what I guess would be the north side of the lot. And I believe, but I would defer to the applicant, that the septic tank is being moved, but the leach field is staying where it is, but being expanded.
Go over here. Are we going to have him speak, Amy, about that question?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Jeff Smith, the applicant, representatives for the Nicholases. As far as the septic tank, I made a note and sent it off yesterday that the owners are definitely open to moving that tank. The caveat to that is, can we find in the process of digging depth enough for that? Right now, it's a lowboy tank, and it's gravity fed from the house. So if we can move it back, chip some ledge, whatever, we're all over it. But there's no plans for any blasting.
Okay.
For a number of reasons.
Okay.
So
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
If you moved it, you'd move it towards the house?
we'd move it towards the leach field, probably
Towards the
between,
leach.
yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
So-
before I let you speak, I just want to make sure we received, and maybe this is what you were going to say, Mark, we received 2 things from the applicant in the last couple days. One is a supplemental information for building and land use permit application. I hope
Correct.
folks have read this because there's a lot of information in here.
Yep.
And the second is a letter from from Jeffrey Smith. And so hopefully you've taken a look at both of those packets. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. The third piece, and probably in terms of the tabling of this item at the last meeting, that is most relevant is you have received, and I think Jeff has larger scale versions of a site plan of the lot that contains the information that the planning board asked for at the last meeting. That plan shows, among other things, the topography of the site, areas where there is ledge, the location of the existing leach field, the 2 wells, et cetera, as well as the property line setbacks that constrain where a building could be relocated to. And so I guess going back to the first question of, is there the ability to reconstruct the house at another location on the lot that is fully conforming with the setback requirements? This and the narrative that you received suggests that, given the ledge, the slope of the land, the existing improvements, that is not a reasonable alternative.
Right. Thank you. If anyone wants to see this, I just took a stab at drawing where I think, on the larger map that we have, I drew where I think that the new structure will be. And
We have a little one.
yeah, we have a little one, but if anybody wants to see that, I'll just pass that around. Does anybody want to see it?
Not important enough for the big one, yeah.
I did that because I was just curious to see, one of the things that we had talked about was, sort of alluded to, was whether or not, if the applicant was required to meet the setback requirements fully, where the additional, I think it was 280 or something like that, square feet could go on the proposed site. And
Square feet, maybe?
it was
How much was that?
128,
That's what I'm saying.
128 total
Square-
additional, but there would be more, okay.
no, less. I thought they were going to cut the,
Oh, you could be right. I probably have the number wrong.
Jeff, the question that we asked, I think, was if how much of the structure exactly, minus what you're taking off from the front
Deck.
decks, is left non-conforming.
About 280.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I tried to just sort of give myself a view of what that might look like. So what we're really left with here is considering whether or not this new proposal meets the setback requirements to the greatest practical extent. And
well, are you moving off of the the threshold question, really, which is, because I thought that was the more important one for this property.
Jurisdiction.
no, go for it.
Interrupting. The ordinance says if the total footprint of the original structure can be relocated or reconstructed beyond the required setback area, no portion may be rebuilt, except if it meets the setback requirement. It says can be relocated. It doesn't say how much it's going to cost to do that, or whether it's impractical or anything. It's sort of tough language, I think. It's, by the way, the same language as the state guidelines. So it's not anything that Harpswell did. However, so theoretically, you could push this entire structure back because there's enough land behind the generator within the setback lines to do that. However, you have to read some form of reasonableness into that discussion, because given the fact that the foundation, here's where the foundation comes in again, looks like it's in really good shape. It is a very unique foundation in that it steps up to go over ledge. And the fact that the ledge is not just shale ledge, it is solid, huge rock. I mean, boulders that probably have been there since the Ice Age. It would be, in my estimation, unreasonable to do that, to move the entire structure. Then the question came in, I thought at the second sidewalk, well, what if you took the 75-foot line and you say that portion that's 75 feet or less, just make it go away? and build up from there. But Mark pointed out, and Tim pointed out, that that removes a huge section of the house. I think that would be unreasonable, too. I think we have to be able to insert in these decisions about at least the threshold question, the greatest practical extent. That's a different story. I think then it gets much more complicated. But at least for the initial decision, I looked at this and I looked at that ledge, and the ledge is all around that house. And I said, they built that house there for a reason. And they built it that way for a reason, because that was probably the only place that they could put it within anything that made financial sense or other sense. And I think that's a pretty high standard. If we continue to use that concept of threshold, and whether or not we could ever ask anybody to spend, I think Jeff told us that it would be at least $160,000 to change the foundation. Even if they could, they don't know what other ledge is there. I think it's reasonable to say that we've met the threshold test. Now we move on to the, as you were saying, the next step is what's the greatest practical extent? And
Well, would you pass the map down?
Yes.
Thank you very much. What I was looking at when I was playing with this, and I am not an architect, and I don't pretend to be. But what I was basically trying to just and total guesstimate in my own mind was if we did take that 280 square feet and put it on the extension that's being placed between the pool and the upper part of the ledge that's parallel to the existing house, what would that
I
look
see that.
like? Could you do it?
where would you draw the line?
You'd have to extend it out here.
No, but where do you draw the line on the front?
Oh, I
What
didn't,
are you taking away and moving?
Part that was non-conforming.
Yeah, but that's a
Probably.
huge
Yeah.
amount.
whatever is in
And it's
the-
not straight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why I just wanted to look for myself and say, okay, what would this look like if we did that? And I say that because $180,000 on a $2.8 or $3 million project isn't an enormous financial hardship.
Yeah.
I think you could make that argument, but I'm not sure that that's the correct figure either. That's just what I was just taking a look to see what could happen.
Yeah,
Dan?
I think what Howard is getting at is a really intriguing question.
Yeah.
Because before I went out to the site walk earlier this week, I took a look at the plan and said, easy enough, just push that baby back a little bit. But once you see what they originally had to go through in order to deal with the ledge, to move it back like that, I would say that it's pretty much impossible unless you were to build it on, 40-foot stilts or something like that. So, that's the reason why we do site walks, is to see just how that, I'm sorry. I knew I was gonna get in trouble with Mary Ann.
Plus,
But
it would-
that's the whole reason why we do site walks, is to say, does what we see on paper match what the actual physical conditions are?
Right. And what I'd be worried about is that if we did that, we would be setting a real precedent that if you had a foundation and it's in good shape, we have to give weight to that. We can't just say, well, take away the foundation and move it to another place, build a new foundation, and wind up with a house that's less space. This is the main part of the house. It would have less space that you'd have to try to make up on the other side, which is where, as I understand it, all of the electric stuff comes in, and where the septic pipes run. I mean, I think that we're asking, that would be a huge precedent in Harpswell, I think.
I appreciate this discussion, Mark.
Madam Chair, and this is sort of an aside, but if you think about what the purpose of the 75-foot setback is to create a buffer. And while that area is, at this point, a mix of grass and shrubs and what have you, if you were to say to the applicant, you have to remove that foundation back, I'm going to suggest to you that you are going to tear the living daylights out of what's going to happen in that area between the building and the water. And in a way, I'm guessing, because I haven't heard the applicant say this, but the intention is to tear the existing building down to the top of the
Daylight walls.
existing concrete walls and build up from there. And that implies to me that there's limited soil disturbance on the water side of the foundation. I think that's an important consideration, because if somebody's got to bring heavy equipment around that side of the building, that is a significant impact on what's a stable but could be unstable situation in the future. And I think that's part of the consideration. I think that's why the state law and the town ordinance puts in the consideration of, is there a foundation? And in this case, I think you've received documentation and you've seen that the concrete foundation is in excellent condition, and nobody's going to have to bring, excavators and dozers down to tear everything out on that side of the property. And I think in terms of the impact, at least in the near term, that's a substantial win that they do not go down there.
Mr. Ironman, you do raise a good question that I hope we can discuss at some point, which is how the deconstruction will take place. But Courtney?
Yeah, just to play devil's advocate here, somebody has to do it. I think of the difference between this application and the one that we just had, where there was 0.19 acres, right?
Yep.
There was no choice there. There was absolutely no way to move that. And I'm interested about the moving of the earth and all of that, but I also see setting a precedent where what I'm reading here says, if the total footprint of the original structure can be relocated or reconstructed beyond the required setback area, no portion of the relocated or reconstructed structure shall be replaced or constructed at less than the setback requirement for a new structure. There is a reason there's a 75-foot setback. The water is rising, folks. And I think if this were my house, I would want to make sure it was as far from the water as it could be. But I wonder about the precedent. It's like, well, this is a tough thing, which it is, and you guys have tried really hard, I think the applicant, to move as much as possible to make it better. But I do want to say that we are still setting this particular precedent, that here is something that could be reconstructed, probably redone, if I could wave a wand, which I can't, I'm no architect either, could work. It would be tough, but it could work. So.
If I might add, we're also, the height of the land in front of the house is at 30 feet above high water line. So
Let's hope it never will get up there, but gosh.
I believe it will.
Thank you.
Well, we've seen some crazy stuff in the January storms where 30 feet,
Yeah.
there may still be water get up there, but
Okay.
it's also far enough away. I want to get back, though, to the
I'm going to
process.
just stop
Sure.
for a second. I want to know if any of the board members
No.
have any comments.
No.
Matt, do you have any questions?
I have one. One of the things that you're seeing tonight is the kind of interplay that we have among board members. And the reason why we do this, that's the whole reason for a public hearing. Occasionally, there are comments from board members who are not here. And as a matter of full disclosure, you need to know that we received one from a board member earlier today. There has been no response to it, but for full disclosure and to get it into the record, I'd like to read her email now.
Please.
This is from Lori. Good morning, all. Will not make tonight.
Madam,
Yes.
I'm not sure reading it into the record is the correct step. I don't think you should even consider it. I think that was illegal communication in violation of the right to know law, and that therefore you shouldn't consider that email at all. The applicant should be made aware of it, but I don't think it should be part of the record.
It's
Okay, I don't want to.
it's already part of the public record, but
Yeah.
as you are correct, I don't think we can discuss it.
It's
to be
in,
honest.
it's in the public domain. It shouldn't be part of the planning board's
Right.
record or
Okay.
This is a
consideration.
public hearing. You have to be at the public hearing.
Okay, I don't
Right.
want to get bogged down in this.
No.
I fully appreciate your desire to be inclusive.
But I will, okay, with that recommendation, I won't do it. But it's a matter of disclosure, the public needed to know. that it occurred.
Absolutely, and that should have been raised at the beginning
Yeah.
of the discussion, that correspondence had occurred from a member of the board that is not present.
Thank you. All right, let's, I appreciate that, Dan. That was done with integrity. I want to just say for folks that, and I thought Dan was actually going to say this, is that this discussion shows how seriously we take our job and how seriously we want to protect the shoreline in Harpswell. They're not making any more of it. And so we're really trying to do our due diligence. At the same time, we want to follow the ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to Howard for his question.
Just a couple of questions. One, I just want to make another comment about the foundation. I think the foundation, the ordinance and the state has said we have to consider that in making the determination. It says shall consider in the ordinance. It doesn't mean that it's conclusive. And we have the right to disregard that if we chose to. I just think that this whole concept of nonconforming uses is a balancing act that the government has determined is fair. Rather than to say to everybody, if you want to rebuild your house, you got to make it conforming, which is impossible in certain things. We would be taking away property right if we did that. The government has come up with a way to deal with that, and pretty much basically that if, except in certain limited situations, we want to try to move this process by making it as conforming as is reasonable. And I think you have to read that whole concept of reasonableness is a big part of this concept, and it has to be read into that one sentence that is really, I think, the threshold question as to whether or not you have to comply with the statute, if you possibly could.
Okay.
But then we get into the next part is, I could say, for example, we should decrease the nonconformity. You could come up with a bunch of variations that move the building back, and just the front foundation would be impacted.
Or you could extend,
But-
the addition further into the
And-
conforming area.
Theoretically, you could, except that that brings in that's the next step, which is greatest practical ability to do that. And so it brings in the concept of expense. They tell us we have to look at the foundation, we have to consider the slope, they gave us a list of things, the state gave us a list of things that we have to consider in making that determination. Either the planning board or Tim, as code enforcement officer, has to make that determination. So if we wanted to get into that and say, okay, well, the 128 square feet of deck that's being removed isn't enough, we want it more, then you have to, first thing you would do as a planning board is you have to take jurisdiction. Or ask Tim to do that analysis and make that decision.
Right, or ask for a new architectural design, which I think is beyond the scope of our purview. Okay, thank you for that. The reasonableness issue is definitely here, but the planner raised a point that I think we hadn't really thought about, and I'd like to ask some questions about how this house is going to be deconstructed, because if you're going to be driving trucks around the front of that property on the shore side to take things apart, then that actually kind of makes the planner's comment about disturbing the shoreline a moot point.
It'll be done differently, but we have the builder here.
Okay.
So if I could refer to Paul to.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as removing the house, the option to get down over the hill, I think you've all have been there enough and try to imagine maybe driving down there is not really sensible. So with my crew, which is we remodel and renovate, we have for the last 35 years. So our job will be to deconstruct the house to the degree where we can start putting it back together. And then we'll be working from the driveway with a variety of, I'm afraid to say, a lot of many hands, first of all. And then when we need to, we have machinery that have cranes and that sort of thing that will be able to lift and remove any demo that we need to remove.
So most of your demolition will be from the driveway with a crane rather than driving down and
Correct.
deconstructing the front shoreline of the
Well, right, because really, when you consider it, we're salvaging a foundation that's really a quality foundation. So if we're to go in there with a bulldozer, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot, cause a lot more expense for yourself.
Okay.
So there's no need to do that.
Okay.
Certainly, surgical deconstruction might be the word.
Okay.
Because we are also working to maintain those ground level areas as best we can.
For
Had we-
landscaping.
And certainly, we don't want to, hey, at the end of the day, it's going to cost me more money if we happen to start wrecking things that shouldn't be
Okay.
wrecked.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
There is the tank and the piping and the
Yeah.
conduit and the electrical all everywhere.
Yep, yep. Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Jeff. Okay. Is there any comment from the public? Going once, going twice. Okay, all right. Any more comments or questions from the board? Oh,
Come to the mic.
It's just a matter of protocol, maybe I don't quite understand. But
Would you
Dan,
state your name?
John Anthony.
Thank you, John.
Daly Island. Dan mentioned a communication, he was about to read it
Yeah.
and enter it into the record. I understand it's probably not appropriate to enter it in the record, however, is it appropriate to learn what that communication is? Or apparently it is in the public, but I'm not sure everyone here has had the benefit of accessing that.
yeah.
So just a question of whether that can be read for general information.
I'm happy to have it read, but I don't want to violate any legal.
No, but don't put it in the record.
I don't think that's necessary. If you ask anybody at the town staff, they will get you a copy of that, send you a copy of it. It's public, it's part of the public domain, there's a process.
I mean, I can summarize it very briefly. She just wanted us to do this due diligence, is essentially what it said. She was really hoping that we would ask questions and that she would accept whatever decision we came up with. But she really was just trying to be a responsible member of the board to make sure that everyone had any input. And I actually asked people who weren't going to be at this meeting to provide input to Mark if they wanted. She provided it to everybody, but I did ask that it be provided to Mark.
Fair enough.
So
That's
that's
a
it.
satisfactory answer, Amy. Thank you.
Okay, John, thank you very much. All right, does anybody have any more discussion, or anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I move that the planning board declines to take jurisdiction for the review of the application of Carl and Stephanie Nicholas to reconstruct a non-conforming structure, Lot 36 on map 22, that will continue to be non-conforming with respect to the required shoreline setback, and remands the application to the CEO, Code Enforcement Officer, for processing. If the proposed reconstruction deviates substantially from this proposal, the town planner shall require that the revised proposal be re-reviewed by the planning board to determine if the board wants to take jurisdiction for the review of the application. And I also note that Code Enforcement Officer is here, has heard our discussion, and that that's our thinking on the matter.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, seconded by Dan. All right, any discussion? Any more discussion? All those in favor, then? All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
And, you know, all those dealing with this, you guys have been
it's a
really
tough
helpful. Really tough.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, that was, I think, our most difficult task for tonight. But you never know.
He said hopefully, yeah.
Does anybody want to take a break?
No.
Okay, all right, okay. Quick bathroom break.
Quick bathroom break.
I'm doing sit-ups, you know.
I hope not.
Amy, your idea of having a work really, I mean, we should do that in
I think we are. Ready to go? All right, we're going to reconvene here. Item number 3 on the planning, on tonight's agenda. This is, the applicant here is, let's see, who is the, well, R.A. Weber, Peter White, This is 61 Potts Point Road, map 19, lot 63. The applicant here is seeking permission to reconstruct a non-conforming patio that is located between the house and the concrete seawall. The planning board did make a site walk for this property and saw it up close and in person. Both the seawall and the concrete patio were destroyed in recent storms. It was quite an amazing devastation just to see what Mother Nature can do. Reconstruction of the seawall has been separately permitted with the appropriate agencies. The structure is non-conforming with respect to the 75-foot shoreline setback by about 1 foot and the property line setbacks. Again, this is a smaller lot and an older development on the shoreline in Harpswell. And again, we have two possible things that we can act upon. One is to decide if the board wants to exercise jurisdiction or if the board wants to remand it to the codes office. I feel like the codes office just is, you know,
They're busy.
the codes office, I want to thank the town for approving the ability of the codes office to hire outside expertise at the applicant's expense. Not that we'll do that in this application, but because the codes office gets so much heavy lifting that they have to do in terms of making sure that things are built as they're supposed to be built under the conditions that they're supposed to be built. It's a lot of work, and the codes office gets put in between satisfying the town codes and the planning board's expectations and the planner's expectations and the applicant's desires and wishes. So it's a really tough job. All right, I'd like to ask the planner if he has anything that he'd like to say further on this application.
To me, Madam Chair, members of the board and public, the key element here is the applicant's representation through the designer and constructor of the patio, that the patio is intended to be an integral part of the stabilization of the seawall system. And I think if we were simply saying that this is a recreational concrete patio, it might be a different situation. But I think you heard at the site walk, and I think the application supplemental information has been provided to say, the patio is going to be tied into the seawall, is going to stabilize it. There are going to be provisions so that if water comes over the seawall, there are scuppers at various levels to remove that water. And so to me, it seems to me that given the size of the lot, the house, there's no place else to put this structure on the lot. The purpose of it is clear, and it seems to me that there's not much else that can be done in this situation.
Okay, thank you. Do the board members have any? Courtney?
I do. I'm just curious for the applicant, was the patio tied into the seawall before?
Would
I was just curious, because it certainly, man, the storm certainly was amazing, the power of that, the way it broke everything up, but I was just curious. I mean, I was hoping it wasn't.
Yeah.
I
thank
was
you for
hoping it
going to
wasn't
the
so that you
podium.
were doing something different that would make it work better.
So state your name, please, for the record.
Bob Berry,
Thank you.
concrete guy. The patio is down inside the wall.
Okay.
What we suggest is putting it up on top of the wall, so when the water comes in, it goes off easier. Because if you notice, most of the walls, what got busted, it looked like they got hit harder when the wave went back. Because all the walls are laying towards the water. So it would definitely help.
Yeah, good. I was just curious. I thought, gee, if it didn't work the first time, will it work the second time?
And there
It
was
wasn't connected.
there was
Excellent.
hardly any rebar in that wall.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My dad was a professional
Howard.
I have a couple of questions, so you may want to stay up there, or somebody stay up there. How big is the slab, concrete slab? Do we know?
I think it's roughly 20 by 20.
20 by 20.
Yeah, it's not real big.
Is it a structure if it's 20 by 20, Mark?
Yeah. I'm going to say approximately.
Okay, because if it's 20 by 20, it looked to me like, if 200 square feet, so 20 by 20 is 400.
400 square feet.
So it's clearly a structure. Okay.
Actually, it's 20 by 30, isn't it, Kyle?
I was looking, I spending some time look, because I think you have to do the same analysis that we have done on all of these.
Yeah, that's what I've got here written down.
So when I was looking at the survey, it showed a deck. I didn't look at the house. What happened to the deck? It's not there. You have a permit to rebuild the deck. Okay. So you rebuild the deck based on, in the same exact place?
That's the plan.
Okay.
There's the deck as it was, I think.
No, that's what I saw in the picture, and then, but when we went to the site visit, it wasn't there. It was gone. Okay, because if the deck weren't there, theoretically, you could move the patio back. And then we'd have that same issue, threshold issue. But if you already have a permit to build back the deck, there is no other room.
Well, also, if it's going to be connected to the seawall in order to reinforce
Yeah, it
it,
makes sense.
there's no point in moving the patio
Yeah.
back, because then it wouldn't be connected.
Right.
I do think that some of the concern is longevity. That's what I think is some of it. So I think that it would make perfect sense to lock those two together, and, you know, no one can sit here and guarantee it'll be here for another 150 years, but
Yeah.
for, you know, reasonable sake, I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, thank
And I'm
you.
Kyle with R.A. Weber and Sons, and
Yeah.
we've been doing.
Thank you.
And-
I was going to ask you that. Thank you very much.
And Dwayne Weber said the exact same thing when we were there. So
Yeah.
reading that, I'll put that in the record, because
Yeah.
he did say that. I guess the way I analyze it is the same way as the one next door, is that there is just, these are small lots, there's no room to move it, in which case we've met the threshold question, and it will stabilize the seawall better to protect this house and the next deck that you build. So I guess that's how I feel about it.
All right. Any other board members have any questions, comments? Okay. Any other member from the public want to speak to this application? Okay, thank you very much. I will entertain a motion. If no one wants to make one, I will make it.
You make
All
such
right.
good motions.
Yeah, you make good
I
motions.
just read. All I do is read. Mark makes good motions. So given the size of the lot and the relationship of the replacement patio to the replacement seawall, there's no opportunity to revise the location of the proposed new structure that would make the replacement structure more conforming. Therefore, it seems reasonable for the planning board to remand the application to the CEO, Codes Enforcement Officer. So I therefore move that the planning board remands the application of Scott White et al. To reconstruct a non-conforming concrete patio on Lot 63 on map 19 that will continue to be non-conforming with respect to required shoreline setback and property line setbacks to the Codes Enforcement Officer for processing. If the proposed reconstruction deviates substantially from this proposal, the town planner shall require that the revised proposal be re-reviewed by the planning board to determine if the board wants to take jurisdiction for review of the application. Any second?
Second?
All right, Courtney seconds. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have something I would just like to say to the neighbors in your area. It's really lovely. I'm sorry to have missed the person who left before, but it's really lovely to see the neighbors supporting one another the way you guys do, rather than being at one another's throats. We've also seen, so thank you for that.
Sorry, thank you. We've grown up together.
5 generations. We're the third of 5 generations.
You can still be at each other's throats.
Thank you for that.
That feels good,
very
boys.
much.
Just
Okay.
come on down to Lowell's Cove. We'll show you.
Really, really. Okay, anyway, we won't go there. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to the applicant's representatives. Appreciate
you.
your coming.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. We are now moving to our last application for this evening. Once again, the planning board did make a visit to this site. It's an absolutely beautiful site. This is an application from Randall and Kathleen Butler and Cameron Johnson, 156 West Cundies Point Road, map 66, lot 6. This is, again, reconstruction of a non-conforming structure. I'll tell a little bit about it, then ask the planner to fill in and give us his take on it. The applicant is seeking permission to reconstruct a non-conforming storage building. It's like a boathouse, really, that was destroyed in recent storms. The lot is located, as I said, 156 West Cundies Point Road. It's located in the Shoreland Residential District, and it contains approximately 3 acres of area. The structure that was destroyed was a 13 by 36 boat storage building with a 5 by 10 bump out on the side. The structure included an approximately 15 by 12-foot deck on the water side. And as a residential boat storage building, the structure was not a functionally water-dependent use, and therefore both the west and north sides of the structure and the deck were non-conforming with respect to the 75-foot shoreline setback. So I'm just going to leave it at that and ask our former planner if he would like to tell us more about this project.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
As those of you who were on the site walk observed, I would use the word devastated to describe what happened there during the January storms. Both the area between the boathouse and the water, as well as the boathouse itself, was essentially destroyed. There may be some possibility to salvage some materials from the boathouse, but it's there as a ruin at this point. The applicant is proposing to essentially reconstruct the boat storage building in place. The proposed building would be 1 foot wider than the previous building was, but the bump out on my geography without looking, is that the north side? Southeast side would be eliminated. And so this comes back to the question of sort of the threshold question of, is there a place or a way that the structure can be placed on the lot such that is conforming to all of the setback requirements? At this point, I just estimated, based on the drawing that was submitted, that the deck was probably 12 to 15 feet from the highest annual tide line. I think the side of the structure was maybe 30 feet or so from the highest annual tide line. I guess you would call it a berm, has been permitted and reconstructed along that side of the building, water side of the building. And so this comes down to the question of, this is a reconstruction of a non-conforming use, even though it was there for decades, long before the existence of shoreland zoning, which made it non-conforming. And so if you will, the two steps are, do you want to take jurisdiction, and I'm going to call it using the Howard test, which I think is a fair one, is the first issue is, is there a way that a boat storage building could be constructed so that it meets the setback requirements entirely? And then the second question, if not, is there a way that the proposed building can be reconstructed so that it is more conforming with the setback requirements?
Mr. Planner, there is one thing that I failed to mention, and that is that the building will be raised. It's
That's
not
correct. It
going-
will be elevated.
Yeah, it will be elevated so that the owner doesn't revisit this problem again in any future storms. You guys both raised your hands at the same time.
Mine is
Courtney.
always some like really basic question. How far back from the water can a boat storage house practically be located? I know there's land to move it back. I'm just wondering, how practical is it to move it really far back? And that's just, should be asking that.
Let me answer that
Yes.
in this way. If one goes by Safe Harbor, they have boat storage facilities that are 500, 1,000 feet from the water.
More.
Those are to be worked on. I think that is,
Well, no, but I mean,
Okay.
they're storage facilities, and, you know, that involves a very different method of operation as I understand this facility was, and that was, there was a storage building, a deck, a ramp, so that boats could be pulled up into the building, not involving, as I understand it, any other form of transport. There's no trailers involved or anything like that. Obviously, you know, if you put a boat on a trailer, the storage facility can be any distance from,
well, that's like the Safe Harbor. They've got some very complicated machines to move their boats.
Yeah, but even
this
a
applicant's
simple
not a
trailer
Commercial
does that.
facility,
Yeah.
Right.
No, this is residential. No, I'm just asking that
Yeah.
It's a good
simple
question.
question.
It's a good question. Howard?
I guess when I look at the threshold question, I don't have enough information to make a determination. I don't think anybody here has. There's 3+ acres or whatever, 2+ acres of land, and we don't know if you could put a boathouse somewhere there that made sense and was a reasonable
Actually, we
thing to
did ask
ask.
that question.
We
on the
asked, and
sidewalk.
I think the answer was yes, but I don't think he understood the gravity of that.
Amy?
Yeah.
I'd suggest, I mean, the
He's
the
here.
applicant is aware of that question, and it was raised to him in both at the site walk and in communication from staff. And I think he should be given an opportunity to make his case relative to that before we beat that dog.
Would you like to make would you like to say something to that and come to the podium? Thank you.
Please.
And just state your name and we'll go from there.
My name is Randy Butler. I am the owner of the property in question. To answer your question, if this building were exclusively a boat storage building, you're absolutely right. It could be put somewhere else. It is not. It is set up, as Mark said, this is set up to be able to retrieve and to launch our boats. I do not recall in my lifetime not having a sailboat, and that sailboat has a mast which you can't put it on a trailer and take it down the road. And I can't personally install that mast without the elevation of the boathouse. In fact, I crawl up on the roof and I grab a hold of the mast and I set it into the boat so it can then be fully rigged and out into the water. It sits on the mooring. We take cushions, life jackets, anything that's in the boats, those go back and forth every time we go out. And they are stored in that building because it's all marine related. The skiff is the same way. It sits in the cove when we want it. We take the motor out, pardon me, but I would not care to lug 75 pounds of motor in and out of a boathouse that's 75 feet back in the woods. I've done it enough times to know that it's possible, but as I get older, it less. And one of the things that I did note, in Chapter 3, I went back to look at mandatory shoreland zoning definitions, and it clearly states that functionally water-dependent usage include and are not limited to recreational and fishing and boating facilities, that recreational boat storage buildings are not considered. But this is something that we operate out of every day during the summer. We go down to the beach, we may go out in the boat, we may go out in the sailboat, we swim there, and so far, without the boathouse being there, it and the ramps were the only safe way to traverse down onto the sand and the gravel for those of us that are over 12.
Over 12.
And that really has prevented us from having any company, any friends, family, because we can't provide a safe location for the kids to be there without having that structure.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions that.
All right, any other questions from the board? I would just say, from the site walk, the structure is a beautiful structure. It almost has an historic quality to it. I did get really torn asunder.
As it did.
Yep, but I think raising the structure is going to be better in many, many ways. And so that's all really I have to say. So unless anybody from the staff, there's no members of the public here, or our new planner have anything that they would like to say?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Old Planner?
I just think for the record, this facility does not meet the definition of a functionally water-dependent use. State law and the state guidelines for shoreland zoning are very specific that storage buildings for recreational boats are not considered to be functionally water-dependent use. And so therefore, I think the staff's position is that it needs to, well, let me put it another way. The 75-foot shoreland setback applies to this building. And then you can go from there in terms of, what you do and where we go. I'm going to use Matt's language, though, from, I think it was the last meeting, of be careful in terms of how you consider this, because this becomes a slippery slope if you say that this is a functionally water-dependent use. There will be a line of people coming to see Margaret and Tim to do things for recreational boat storage that don't need to meet setback requirements.
So it's a reconstruction of a non-conforming structure.
Oh,
No, it's the reconstruction of a non-conforming structure that does not meet the setback requirements.
Right. Thank you.
and is not a functionally, water functional use to
Matt?
meet that definition either.
I just want to speak to kind of what you alluded to, Amy, in the historical significance of the boathouse. I've grown up, and my father grew up, and my grandfather grew up fishing in that bay, and that boathouse has been used as a landmark for navigational purposes by fishermen for generations. So I'm not sure if that's something we can even consider as a board, but I would hope that it would be, especially for future things too, because the more specific thing that comes to mind is the water tower that got removed at Mitchell Field. There were shrimp tows that were based off of lining that water tower up with other stuff, and those are now lost. That's generational knowledge that we'll never get back. And I think that His
Wait, now
boat.
you got a higher communication tower right there.
Yeah, but it's not in the same place. It doesn't line up quite as well.
Thank you.
Let's
Matt.
not get on the tower.
Okay, yeah.
We fought
All
that
right.
battle. It's done.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Okay, so the issue, Howard,
I just want to go to the point of this, that I don't know the answer to this. This is, we don't know where else it could be done.
Yeah.
I know, though, that when we discussed at the last meeting, I thought we all agreed that the burden on this question of whether it can be moved is on the applicant, and we haven't had that addressed. You've told us why it's difficult for you to operate without the boathouse. But what we need to know is there really another spot that the boat could be stored in on the land? There may not be. And the other thing was how far, if there wasn't an alternate way of moving it out so that it conformed, is there a way to make it a little less non-conforming? Those are what we have to make a determination of as we decide whether to remand it to codes. I would make a motion to table this and ask that Mr. Butler meet with codes, with Tim and Margaret, and look at the land and make that determination and try to think about ways to make it better. If in fact the first determination, because of the trees, because of the slope of the land, there's a whole list of considerations that we would have to make. Whether or not you could put the boathouse somewhere, and yeah, it's difficult. I understand, but you've already built that nice area that goes down to the water with the riprap and the path. I mean, anyway, I guess what I'm thinking of is that we ought to afford him the opportunity, knowing how we approach these things, to come back in and say, there's no place to put it, number one. I can't reproduce the way I use the building now because it's not going to be close to the water, and I'm going to have to go somewhere else to launch my boat, or pay someone to step the mast. And then maybe you guys can come up with a better plan for the building that may be a little better back a ways. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Tim?
So yeah, thank you.
Mr.
Clark.
I mean, if we remanded to you tonight, you'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And if he was to move it back toward the house, that land is the only thing that's really flat and might raise up a bit, and he wants to raise it anyway. You're not going to get any farther away from the hat by going that way. The only way to get away from the hat is go inland, and that automatically the terrain goes up so steep that I would think that that's going to be pretty difficult to have that access that he has now, if that's what we're comparing things to. So I don't.
Talking about
No, I don't-
The
reasonableness.
best is go straight back, but you
assuming-
don't get any farther away. That's all I'm saying. And the only other way is to go inland, and that's pretty difficult for the terrain. and
Well,
the
I
tree.
think that's what we're talking
Yeah.
about. We're not talking about taking the boat out of wherever it's located and bringing it down to the water there.
Right.
I think what we're talking about is, the principal use is a boathouse. It is, because it's residential, it is not a water-dependent use, which means it doesn't have to be in
Right there.
the 75-foot area, because it's residential. If it were commercial, it could be. So I guess what I'm saying is that if there's no place to build a boathouse, like a garage, on the property, that's where the threshold question gets met. And that depends on the slope, and as you
Right.
said, the trees and all that kind of stuff. We haven't even seen a survey or a plot plan of the property. I mean, I don't know how the board feels about this.
Okay, you've made
I
a
just-
motion. Have you made a motion?
I
heard
moved
a
to it to be tabled.
Okay,
and
is there a
remand it
second to
And
that?
ask the code enforcement officer to work with them to see if we can make it better, but, or to find out the answer to the questions.
So I would ask if there's a second to that.
I'll second. We're going to have discussion now that it's been moved in second.
Okay, thank
Correct.
you. Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes. I know where Howard is going, and I've agreed with you an awful lot tonight. This is great. My concern is when we hear the information that we are required to have to make a threshold decision at the meeting, it makes it really difficult for us to make an informed decision.
Right.
And, you know, this is the first I've heard about a lot of the stuff that Tim was talking about. So, you know,
That's why I moved to table.
yeah. So as a part of staff recommendation, that should include everything that we need in order to make a threshold determination. And I don't think we have it.
So, okay, all right. Any, Mr. Ironman?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just for the record, a motion to table is not debatable under your rules.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. then-
Sorry.
Not
No,
discussable, you mean?
he's right.
Thank you, thank you. All right, all those in favor of tabling, please raise your hand.
Do we have any choice?
No, we do
always
have a
have a
choice.
choice.
We do
Yeah, you
have a
always have a
choice.
choice.
I am, okay, so all those in favor, one,
I'm
We can say
feeling
yes.
like I don't really get it. I like the idea of having a discussion. I wish we had had the information that we got tonight, but I don't know for Robert's rules exactly what that means in terms of,
Well, if you
But I'm
want to have a
supposed to say
discussion,
it.
I will withdraw the motion. And if my second agrees to
I-
withdraw it,
I'll-
I'll make it later. Let's have a discussion.
okay? You gonna withdraw your motion?
Sure.
All right, motion is withdrawn.
I'll
I
withdraw
don't
my
know.
second.
Okay, you withdraw your second. All right, we're still talking. Courtney, do you have something?
I just, am I to understand, I guess it's for Mr. Clark that I'm asking this question. Am I to understand that as far as codes is concerned, there's really no other practical place to put this structure? I mean, it's not just storage, it's also a place that the boat is fixed, as I remember. I mean, is this the only practical, reasonable place to put it? That's what I'm asking.
Any practical, reasonable place to put it would be near water. Is there anything in the codes that says that it has to be certain where? That's just goes back to our setbacks for any structure. So, does that help? I don't-
Well, it helped me, but you're frowning, so
Yeah.
it's making me feel that maybe I didn't understand what you meant. But the question is, does the terrain, it's either we say, no, you can't do it, so forget about it, or is there another place that this could be put, practically speaking, where it would work for its function? That's my question.
And over the 2 years while he's been remodeling the house, I've really only walked between the house and this boathouse. I haven't really walked the rest of the property, so I guess I really can't speak of the rest of the property and how it might be on another part where the water is. That's would be a true.
Well, that
Mr.
changes
Gilly.
things.
Are you?
Well, I
Are
think
you
that,
complete?
I mean, that changes things. If Tim doesn't feel like he has the information, then the question is, do we remand it to codes? Or have you guys come back with more information and let us know? But I don't know the answer.
If we remand it to codes, we're out of it.
Right, I know that.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Gilly.
I think something else that we should consider is the applicant had stated at the site walk, and it says it in his application too, that he's gonna try to basically reuse every piece of material that he can from the old boathouse. So how reasonable is it for us to expect him to dismantle that material and then lug it 75 feet up over an embankment to reassemble it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a
Like,
good point.
And that's something that came up several times tonight, was the deconstructing. And here we have a gentleman that's really going to reuse everything. I remember him stating at the sidewalk that he'd straighten the nails and hand them to the contractor if he was willing to use them. So I think that we should put some weight on the fact that he's recycling everything, and there's not going to be a huge footprint, that we would be concerned about with other applications.
That's a great point. Thank you for that, Matt. I just want to say that on the sidewalk, there is a very steep slope upward from this building. And you, in order to reconstruct the building upland, you'd have to take trees. And then you'd also be disturbing the earth by bringing the boat up and bringing the boat down and by doing the new construction. So to the greatest practical extent, for me, includes disturbance to the earth and the environmental consequences of making this applicant take trees down to rebuild something new in a place that's already treed. If the applicant had waited for 2 years before coming before the planning board to reconstruct this boathouse, I might be inclined to say, the window of opportunity closed. But he hasn't. He's been right on it. And just my feeling is from being on the sidewalk that it's right where it should be. And it's causing the least possible environmental impact, and that he's done his due diligence. But that's my opinion for the board. But that's all I have to say. So we are back where we started from. Does anyone have anything further to say?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
As do I.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
What was the agreement? What are we agreeing, what are you agreeing?
We're not going to move it. We're gonna
My
reconstruct
agreement's
it.
kind of to remand it to codes. That's my agreement. That's what I'm thinking. I think codes will do the right thing, but I like the points that you've made. I understand your points, but it seems to be that it is in a place that makes sense for its use. It may not be functionally water dependent, but come on, it's a boat. Boats don't work unless they're on the water.
Okay, we have someone.
Everybody's coming out of the woodwork.
Would someone from code?
I just can't stand on that one. That's just ridiculous.
Am I
I'm
ridiculous
sorry.
now?
No.
Okay.
Okay. It's
boat
getting late. Let's-
Storage, which is the main function of this building. It has other uses, I agree, but boat storage can be anywhere. Boats can have their mast stepped in the water, they can be taken to a boat yard, they can be shipped, all sorts of things. A lot of power boats have trailers. They just hook them up and take them up to the water, put them in. That's why we have 5 ramps in Harpswell.
Okay, all
I
right.
still like you,
Thank
Howard.
you.
No
I
one
like you
sidewalk.
too.
Okay, hold on a second.
disagree?
I'm going to take charge of this meeting. I'd like to hear from Christine, and then Matt, and then we'll hear from Margaret.
Maybe this is crazy, but if this had never happened to this building, would we even be having this discussion because it already was there?
Right.
So, to me, it makes sense to reconstruct it. Somebody said along the line it was fine, or maybe they didn't, I don't know. But to me, I think it should be reconstructed. It's not based in anything in front of me, it's just common sense to me. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Mr. Planner?
I would, if you want to do something with this application, I would not recommend to the board that you in any way suggest that this structure is a functionally water-dependent use. If you make that determination, I think you run the risk of creating substantial issues for the community because there will be other people who have, okay, I want to build a garage 20 feet from the water to put my boat in, and it's a functionally water-dependent use.
Thank you.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you.
And
This is
so
not a
you don't wanna
functional
go there.
water-dependent
Okay.
use. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding us of that. I think you're absolutely correct. Margaret?
Perhaps you guys want to take remand of the application. You're having a great discussion, and I agree with you.
You want to make it our problem, huh?
Basically.
I like the discussion you're having. And maybe you want to take jurisdiction of it, that's all.
Or not?
Because you have enough to do? Okay.
Well, there's one
No,
other
I don't
way.
want to put words in your mouth at all, but you do have enough to do. Mary Ann?
Mary Ann has something to say.
I'm sorry to do this to you with Mary Ann Naif, and I'm on the Conservation Commission. I was going to come out to talk to what Mark just addressed. My understanding is water-dependent use is fine for commercial fishing 1. This is shoreline residential. So to Mark's point and my point as well, as I know of a lot of boathouses that are going down, and they are right on the water. And if we're making this determination, we're looking into the future of how we're going to handle more and more boathouses who have been there for generations that the storms are going to take down. So I think my only statement is, where we go, I think that needs to be highlighted. That it, isn't water-dependent use unless it's in commercial fishing 1.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. This has been a very good discussion. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Nope.
Okay.
Did you have your hand?
Maybe the planner needs
I
to say.
have,
mean,
I
made
have a
a
lot
motion,
of
but I-
feelings
I
about this.
withdrew it.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this application. I do understand that we need to make sure that we don't start something that we regret, because as Mary Ann said, there are going to be more of these residential boat launches that are on the shore.
If
I
may.
I don't see that there's any other place that this could be put, but I am willing to entertain a motion to table it so that the applicant and codes can do their due diligence and convince the board that there is no other place to put it. And I say that with some,
Heaviness of heart.
yeah, I do, because it's a beautiful structure, and it's a landmark, blah, blah, blah. But, and I think the applicant has the best of intentions, but I will make a motion that we table this application.
I'd like to second that.
Okay.
And since we can't discuss it, I'll just second.
Mr. Chair, can the applicant say something while we voted to table, or do we have to table? We have to act on that motion?
You can, you're not supposed to, but, I think if you wanted to listen to them, you.
If you,
Dan has something to
if
say.
you use demeters rather than Robert's rules, we can have that.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, would you like to say something, sir?
Only two things. One, I want to thank you all for, number one, making the site visit and taking the time to consider this. I was somewhat remiss, only then that I have never been to one of these before, and clearly I was not as concise as I should have been in the information. I would be happy to work with the code enforcement, and that's really the second piece is I want to thank the folks from the code enforcement office because they have navigated me through a plethora of paperwork that I would not have been able to get through without them. So a very special thanks to these folks. They go above and beyond their normal duties, and I hope somebody gets to recognize them for that.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. That is very much appreciated. right.
You folks do not have an easy job.
All right, we have a table, a motion on the table to table, and we have a second, and there's no discussion. All those in favor of tabling?
I was like, yes, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you back here soon.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good luck to you.
Yeah.
All right.
You're going to be seeing more of me.
That concludes the applications before us. We have other business consideration of the minutes from May 29th and June 26th. I have looked at those minutes and suggested that there be some corrections for typos, but that is the only thing that I saw that needed to be changed.
I'm sorry, I only was able to read one of them, and I'm sorry.
Okay?
Had the
Any-
grandkids, what can I say?
Content looked good to me.
Okay.
I thought they were okay.
Okay, I move that we accept the minutes for May 29th and June 26th with corrections as requested. Any discussion? Any second? Second, who
I
seconded?
can't really second it because I haven't read both of them.
Okay, Howard seconds. Any discussion about the minutes? No. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Planners update.
Members of the board, a couple things. One, earlier you made reference, Madam Chair, to the ordinance revision that allows codes to obtain outside assistance. Margaret, you want to go to the microphone and talk about the proposal relative to Lobster Lane?
About our outside assistance?
Yeah.
We are working on getting outside assistance from the Town of Harpswell consulting engineer, Goral Palmer. And they're hopefully going to help us do some inspections that are a little out of our area of expertise on the Lobster Lane project. So we're really thankful for the ordinance amendment. They should do things like stormwater, maybe, we talked about a lot of things, anything underground, the elevator, I don't know, a whole bunch of, there was a whole list of things, but hopefully they'll help us kind of stay a little bit on top of some of the stuff that we don't have time to deal with day to day. And obviously, we're still going to do all the building, plumbing, and septic inspections.
Thank you. I would just note, and we'll be talking about this with the new planner, I think this is really important in that when the planning board, first of all, you'll have records of all of that because you'll have communication with the consultant. And we'll be able to go back and look at projects 5 years from now and say, was this done, was that done, was that done? And that's really important.
And was it done in the way that you guys approved it?
Was it
which is
done in
what-
the way that
yeah.
we approved it? So my hope is working with the codes office, the new planner who has been a codes office, that we have a tickler file that if we approve something with conditions of approval, that you go back and remind yourself to check on whether that's been completed and have a tickler file with a date and what was done and a sign-off on all those conditions. That's something we can talk about in a workshop.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Tickler file.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
In sort of the follow-up to that, I have suggested to both Margaret and to Matt that after Matt gets acclimated a little more, that you schedule a workshop to talk about procedures, the planning board's expectations. I wouldn't do that right off, but I think, maybe after Labor Day or whenever you want to do it. Because I think that would be good, and I think with having a full-time person, there can be, sort of a juggling of who does what and what have you.
That was going to be my next suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. And then, I think the expectation is that for the August planning board meeting, you will probably see both Matt and I here in terms of the items and what have you. And then after that, hopefully you'll see Matt and not me as we go forward. Finally, I would like to make an observation that I've often wondered why Matt wears his hat all the time. But during the Pledge to the Allegiance, I discovered that he has a large bald spot here and here.
Is there a problem?
No,
Howard.
it's I said it's an observation.
I didn't want to blind the audience. I'm going to public service.
I have, thank you. I assume that's not part of the public record, but I do have
It is now.
one. We love having Matt on the board. He adds so much in addition to his bald head. And we really, we're just very grateful that he's taken his considerable workload and added to it by joining us with this, on this board.
It's fun.
I have a family situation that will require me on probably a couple of days' notice to go to Minneapolis for a couple of days to work on moving a family member from her current location to another location. And so I will let the planner know. There may be short notice on that, so we have an able vice chair, and I just want to put everybody on notice that if that happens, I'll let everyone know.
Okay.
And last, I want to say, Margaret, thank you for stepping up to the plate and
And the mic.
yeah, and the mic and speaking out on the last application. You did so very gracefully, and appreciate it. Okay. All right, I declare this meeting adjourned.